photographed them, filmed them, actually followed the trail in the snow to where the Sasquatch apparently stepped onto some ground soft enough for him to make a partial cast. The eyewitness descriptions, eyewitness drawings.
There are stories that unsettle you. And then there's this one. A hunter vanished and a friend returned, shaken, bloodied, and silent. What happened deep in Alberta's Nordic wilderness? For years, nobody knew. But then, footage surfaced. And what it revealed chilled everyone who saw it. This isn't folklore. This isn't a tale told around a fire. This is what was left behind, on tape. Let's start at the beginning. The pact between two hunters. Frank Chard and Donald Cabby weren't your average weekend adventurers. They were the kind of men who could read elk tracks like lines in a book, who felt more at ease beneath pine trees than under a roof. The wild, vast, and merciless deep woods near Nordegg, Alberta, had become their second home. Together, they navigated its brutal seasons like seasoned ghosts. They had a pact, unspoken but ironclad. Every autumn and winter, no matter what, they'd meet, gear up, and head into the wild. They trusted the forest and each other. Snowstorms couldn't stop them. Neither could the freezing wind that carved through the trees like knives. Their bond ran deep, deeper than the roots of the forest they hunted in. But Frank had something Donald didn't: a camera. He filmed compulsively and obsessively. The crackle of fire, the slow grind of a snowmobile engine, the eerie stillness before dawn, nothing escaped his lens. Most called it overkill, but in the end, it would be the only proof that proved anything ever happened. December 2013, another hunt. Another agreed-upon meeting, just before sundown. Same place, same plan. But that's the thing about rituals. When one breaks, everything breaks. Donald never came. No calls, no tracks, just silence. The kind of silence that makes the hair on the back of your neck stand up. Something was wrong. And Frank? He knew it. The moment Donald failed to appear, something shifted in Frank. There was no hesitation, no debate, just immediate action. He mounted his snowmobile and plunged into the frozen wilderness, a lone figure against the vast white sprawl. The deeper he went, the more the forest seemed to close in, dense and indifferent. That's when the noise began. It was faint at first, drawn out, haunting. A call unlike anything he'd heard in years of tracking predators. It didn't belong to the wind, and it certainly didn't belong to any familiar animal. The sound tugged at him, pulled him deeper, like bait strung on an invisible thread. The forest around him grew colder. The trees narrowed, thickening like a trap. Then, with no warning, the engine coughed once, then fell still. Silence swallowed the trail. His ride was dead, stranded in the heart of nowhere. But Frank didn't freeze. He grabbed what mattered. A rifle slung tight across his back, signal flares tucked close to his chest, and that stubborn resolve that hunters earn through years of risk. He pressed on, boots crunching against snow, breath curling into the dark. The sound followed him, never nearer, never farther, just there, constant, unyielding, like the forest had grown a voice, and it was calling only to him. The severed head. The snow was quiet beneath his boots, untouched and undisturbed, until the beam of his flashlight struck something unnatural. What lay before him wasn't debris or brush. It was a human head, detached, frozen stiff in the snow like some grotesque offering. The skin was torn, the features barely recognizable, twisted in whatever agony ended them. Frank didn't move for a moment. The forest seemed to hold its breath. Whatever happened here, it hadn't been quick. It hadn't been clean. And it hadn't been human. He kept walking. Not far ahead, something emerged between the trees. A wooden structure, rough, low, hidden behind fallen branches and brush. It wasn't the work of time or weather. This shelter had been built, layered, braced, and reinforced. Someone, or something, had crafted it with purpose. But it wasn't abandoned. On a low-hanging branch nearby, brown fur clung to splintered wood, tangled like it had been ripped free in a struggle. Frank barely glanced at it before tossing it aside, the way someone might swat away a spiderweb. But in hindsight, that fur was a warning, a clue, a signature, because what waited inside was far worse than what lay behind. Crossing the threshold of the shelter was like stepping into a nightmare, crafted by something with no concept of mercy. The air was thick, stale, almost clinging to his skin. The first thing Frank saw stopped him cold. A wolf, strung up like a rag doll, but not whole. Its front legs had been ripped clean off, leaving jagged stumps where bone and tendon jutted out grotesquely. Its chest had been torn open, hollowed. The organs were missing. What remained was an empty cavity, swinging from a branch as if placed there for display. Just a few steps away lay another horror. A deer's head, suspended upside down. Blood crusted around its neck. Patches of fur were missing, exposing raw flesh and bone. The animal hadn't just been killed, it had been mutilated, torn apart in a frenzy that couldn't be explained by any predator Frank had ever known. This wasn't the work of hunger or survival. This was deliberate. Then it came, another howl. Frank reached for his weapon, hands trembling not from the cold, but from the dawning realization that he was being watched. The shot was fired, but it changed nothing. The forest didn't flinch, and whatever had created this slaughter was already upon him, dragged into the unknown. The forest exploded with the crack of a single shot, sharp, hollow, and final. Then came the silence, not peaceful, but deafening. A silence that didn't settle. It swallowed. Frank's camera didn't stop rolling. In those next few frames, truth replaced speculation. The footage shook violently, spinning before it settled at a tilted angle. Through the grainy lens, Frank's body came into view, lifeless, slack. His arms dragged limply through the snow, his boots leaving two dark trails behind. He wasn't walking. He wasn't crawling. He was being pulled. Whatever had him wasn't visible. Only the signs remained, the ground rushing beneath him, his body lurching as if clutched by something immense. Something that moved with purpose. No resistance, no struggle. Just a man, carried like a trophy into the depths of something far worse than wilderness. And Frank? He wasn't fighting anymore. He was gone. The second video opens in near total darkness. No wind, no voices. Just the slow creak of something shifting overhead. As the lens adjusts, the horror reveals itself in pieces. Bones, scattered across the floor like discarded puzzle pieces. Ribs from deer, skulls of wolves. Flesh so decayed it no longer resembled muscle, just sludge clinging to bone. Frank is on the ground, dazed, his breathing ragged. He's not in a cave or a den, he's in a nest. The space is crudely constructed but deliberate, branches lashed together, twigs woven into a dome overhead. Above him, fur dangles from the rafters like trophies. Jagged bones stick out between wooden slats, wedged like grotesque decorations. The smell, thick, wet, and sour, presses down like a weight. It's the stench of blood long dried and meat long spoiled. To his right, a crude bed lies raised on a base of logs and packed leaves. It's large, too large for a human, and lying there, motionless, breathing slow and deep, is a shape covered in black fur. Frank doesn't scream, but the silence screams for him. It lay on the bed of branches, unmoving except for the rise and fall of its massive chest. The creature's body was cloaked in dense black fur. Even in stillness, it radiated strength. Muscles rippled beneath the fur with each slow breath, like coiled steel beneath velvet. It wasn't asleep, it was resting, aware. Frank was just feet away from it, his eyes locked on the figure, heart pounding in his ears, yet his hands moved with eerie calm. He had the calculated grip of a hunter who knew he was inside something's territory. He reached into his gear and pulled his hunting knife, slowly, quietly. Then he leaned in and sliced away a small clump of fur from the creature's back. It didn't react. No growl, no twitch. Just that steady, thunderous breathing. Frank didn't dare linger. He didn't examine the fur. He didn't pause to film. He turned and slipped out into the shadows. The fur was all he took, but it meant everything. Frank emerged from the lair like a man reborn, only this birth came through terror, not light. He staggered into the cold night, legs unsteady, eyes darting in every direction. His hands shook, not from the wind that sliced through the trees, but from the memory of what lay behind him. He found his bag half buried in snow near a twisted root. Fumbling, he tore it open, fingers numb and frantic. The flare gun, his one remaining lifeline, slid into his grip. With a deep breath, he raised it to the sky and fired. A red burst bloomed overhead, a streak of light in an endless canopy of black. A desperate cry swallowed by a forest too deep to care. Then, just as he began to move again, movement ahead. A deer bolted across the path, hooves pounding against ice. For a second, Frank's body tensed, instinct preparing to run. But the deer wasn't the danger. It was what followed, or rather, what didn't. Silence, total and suffocating. No branches cracked, no birds stirred. The forest had gone still. Something was listening. And now, it knew where he was. The forest breathes. Long after the incident, Frank couldn't shake the sensation that the forest had been more than just a setting. It had been a presence. The trees loomed. Every sound, every shift in the wind felt pointed, intentional, aware. He swore the forest watched him. Not metaphorically, literally. Every creak of bark felt like a warning. Every whisper of wind carried something personal. It was as if the woods had chosen him, and he could never explain why. He kept returning to the same questions over and over. Why had he been taken but not torn apart? Why had Donald vanished completely, only to be discovered a decade later, lifeless and discarded? And why, when everything pointed to death, had Frank been allowed to escape? There were no answers, only guesses, wrapped in dread. The more he tried to make sense of it, the more reality slipped through his fingers. Whatever lived in those woods didn't just hunt, it judged. For years, Donald Cabby was just another name added to a long, cold list. A missing person swallowed whole by the wilderness. Nobody, no clues, no answers. Search efforts had turned up nothing, only snow, silence, and the steady insistence that he had vanished without a trace. But the forest remembers what it buries. 10 years later, a group of hunters stumbled upon a grim discovery. In the same area Frank had searched, not far from where the footage was captured, they found bones, weathered, scattered, but unmistakably human. It was Donald, or what was left of him. The revelation was jarring, not just because of the time that had passed, but because it confirmed what many feared, that something had been out there all along, hiding in plain sight and hiding a body with it. By then, Frank had already slipped out of view. No interviews, no updates, no digital trail. He had vanished too, not in body, but in presence, as if he had served his purpose, and retreated into the same shadows that once nearly consumed him. One man dead, the other is silent. And the forest? Still waiting. What the world has seen, those two eerie, disjointed video clips, is only a sliver of the full story. They captured just enough to unsettle, to horrify, to leave viewers with more questions than answers. But there are gaps, obvious cuts, moments missing, entire stretches of time simply gone. Some footage was clearly edited before it ever reached the public. Cuts between scenes are abrupt, lighting shifts too quickly. Audio flickers out just before moments that feel like they should crescendo into something more. Other parts, according to scattered reports and forum whispers, were never uploaded at all. Frank's full descent down the mountain, the exact moment of escape, any clear footage of the creature itself, all conspicuously absent. And then there's the matter of the original files, the raw recordings, the uncut truth. They're gone, or rather sealed. Allegedly taken into police custody once Donald Cabby's remains were confirmed, the footage became evidence. It moved from the internet to an evidence locker, and once it did, the public stopped getting answers. No official statements, no case updates, no follow-up investigations ever disclosed to the media. Just a dead man, a traumatized survivor, and two chilling videos left behind like breadcrumbs to something much larger. Which begs the real question, why hold it back? If it were a prank, there'd be no reason for police involvement. If it were staged, the footage would have been milked for views, dissected for attention, monetized, and picked apart frame by frame. But that didn't happen. No press tour, no viral campaign, no media circus. Instead, the story slipped into a strange silence, one that mirrors the forest it came from. This wasn't just another hunting trip gone wrong. It wasn't a hoax either. This was something different, more than a legend. In the shadowy forests of British Columbia and Alberta, Legends don't live in books, they breathe through trees. These provinces have long been the heart of North America's Bigfoot lore, and not without reason. Sightings here are more frequent, vivid, and strangely consistent. Tracks appear where no human has walked, and sometimes people vanish without a trace. Locals speak of them with uneasy familiarity. Towering figures, cloaked in thick fur, said to roam silently through dense brush without ever breaking a twig. Eyewitness accounts describe impossible strength, limbs that can snap branches like toothpicks, carnivorous behavior that defies known animal patterns. Some say these creatures don't just feed, they butcher. They don't live in caves, they build nests. Even tool use has been speculated. Stones arranged with purpose, branches sharpened and stacked. Remains of prey are displayed in ways no natural predator would ever bother with. These aren't mindless beasts. They're something else. Something adaptive, deliberate, maybe even strategic. Frank's footage, what little of it has surfaced, fits these descriptions too well. The nest, the mutilated animals, the dragging, the shape in the shadows. It's not just suggestive, it's disturbingly aligned with decades of reported sightings across the region. But there's one catch, one hole in the theory that keeps skeptics grounded. Despite everything, there's no clear image. The creature itself is never fully captured. Not in silhouette, not in still, not in motion. And in a world where truth often hinges on a single frame, that absence matters. Not everyone believes Frank's story. In fact, many don't. For skeptics, the biggest red flags aren't in the forest. They're in Frank's decisions. The logic, they say, doesn't add up. Why would anyone, let alone a seasoned hunter, head into the brutal Canadian wilderness alone at night in sub-zero temperatures? Why not wait until morning? Why risk everything without backup, without a call for help, without even notifying local authorities? Then there's the camera. If Frank was truly in danger, why keep filming? Why capture the moment instead of escaping it? Fear doesn't usually encourage documentation, it compels flight. And yet, even as he stood in a nest of bones with something massive breathing beside him, he kept the lens steady. It's not just what he did, it's what he didn't do. After all that, Frank didn't go public. He didn't launch a YouTube channel, sell his story, or sit down for interviews. There are no podcasts featuring his voice, no blog posts, no late-night TV appearances, just 2 video clips, and then digital silence. In an age where viral stories can turn nobodies into celebrities overnight, Frank stayed invisible. No usernames, no content, no social trace at all. And if this really were a hoax, what was the point? There was no payoff, no viral fame, no monetization. The videos weren't even optimized for reach. They were quietly uploaded, barely shared, and never promoted. Which leaves a strange, unsettling possibility. If this wasn't for attention, maybe it wasn't fake. Maybe it was simply fear, caught on tape. And once that fear was shared, Frank vanished, leaving behind no answers, no follow-up, and no closure. Just questions and silence. The silence that followed. Once the 2 video clips surfaced, they sent ripples through the online community. Then, nothing. All that's left are fragments, 2 grainy videos, a forest littered with remains, a makeshift nest built with inhuman strength, and a timeline that doesn't add up. No one knows where Frank is now. No one's even sure if he's alive. The videos were posted anonymously. No confirmed identity, no traceable location. Just raw, chilling visuals and a date stamp that stops short of any answers. Some say he's hiding. Others believe he didn't survive much longer after the escape. And a few think that the creature wasn't done with him. Whatever lived in that forest, if it truly exists, is no wild animal driven by hunger alone. It doesn't thrash or chase blindly. It calculates. It watches. It waits in stillness so complete that even experienced hunters like Frank walk right into its domain without ever knowing. It builds with purpose. The shelter Frank found wasn't the result of instinct. It was constructed. Bones were arranged, not scattered. The nest was built to endure cold, shield movement, and conceal something far larger than any human. It doesn't kill indiscriminately either. It tears apart its prey with terrifying precision, and when it's done, it doesn't erase the evidence, it leaves it. Bits of fur, shattered skulls, hanging carcasses and twisted remains left in places where they will be found. Breadcrumbs, not to help you escape, but to pull you deeper. The moment Donald's remains were confirmed, the story crossed a line. It was no longer speculation, no longer an internet legend. It became a matter for law enforcement. A death in the woods with digital evidence and a survivor's footage as the only lead. That changed everything. The full videos were seized and sealed. 2 fractured clips, carefully clipped and filtered through time, possibly missing their most revealing moments. But even so, it's enough. Enough to haunt anyone who watches. Frank made it out, barely. He descended that mountain not like a man escaping a nightmare, but like one still trapped inside it. His steps were uneven, his body battered, his mind fractured. The flare he fired lit the sky for seconds, a lonely burst of hope above a forest that didn't care. No response, no rescue. Not that night. Days passed before someone found him, half frozen, disoriented, barely able to speak. But even then, when warmth returned to his skin and breath steadied in his lungs, he said nothing. No names, no details, not even a whisper about the nest or the thing inside it. He didn't explain how he escaped. He didn't mention the fur he took. He just kept quiet, letting the footage speak where he couldn't. That silence became his legacy. All that remained were 2 video clips, jagged windows into something unspeakable. Just a record, just proof. And then, nothing. Time passed, but the mountain didn't change. The trees still stand. The wind still cuts. And somewhere beneath that canopy of cold, the nest may still exist. The wood, warped by snow but standing. The bones, bleached and forgotten. The bed was wide enough for something not human, and maybe the creature is still there too, waiting for footsteps to return, waiting for another Frank, another Donald, another curious soul who wandered too far beyond the trail. Some might stumble across it and leave before they understand what they saw. Others won't be so lucky, because in those woods, it's not about escape. It's about whether you're allowed to survive. So what really happened to Frank Chard and Donald Cabby? We may never know. But one thing's certain. In the icy shadows of Alberta's forests, something moved that night. Something that didn't belong. Something we weren't meant to see. And Frank? He brought back more than just footage. He brought back a warning. A sliver of truth wrapped in terror. The silence he kept for so long. Now it's ours to sit with. Will you listen? Or will you too dismiss it until it's your turn to walk into the woods?